Oh no! Are you okay?
But this time, he doesn't drive away. He changes her life forever.
From the streets, to becoming his personal secretary, to saving his life when he needed her most.
Hello, this is Catherine. My dad, the billionaire, has been kidnapped.
The early morning sun cast a golden hue across the smooth highway, its rays glinting off the sleek black car as it cruised steadily towards the toll plaza. Inside, Adrian Montgomery, a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and business circles alike, gripped the steering wheel with a calm, practiced hand. A billionaire by any measure, Adrian was used to control of his empire, his image and the people around him. But today, as the toll plaza approached, his world was about to tilt in a way he hadn't anticipated. The car slowed as it neared the booth, where a board attendant nodded and collected the toll fee. Adrian slid out his card and paid without a word. As he drove off, his eyes caught a flicker of movement near the side of the road. A young girl, no older than 15, her skin the deep rich hue of polished mahogany, her hair tumbled in wild curls, framing a face marked with a strange blend of fatigue and hope. She stood on the dusty shoulder, her hand stretched out as she begged for spare change. Despite the wary stares of passers-by, she hesitated only for a moment before climbing into the car, her heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope. As the car pulled back onto the highway, the world outside seemed to fade. Inside, a fragile bridge between two very different lives began to form, built on an act of courage from a year ago, and now a chance for something new. Scene flashback 1 year ago. It was a rainy evening. Adrian's dog, Shadow, had slipped its leash and darted onto a busy street. The sound of screeching tires and a sudden, sickening impact filled the air. Just as a speeding car barreled toward Shadow, a figure, a girl with wild curls and fierce determination, ran into the street, scooping the dog into her arms moments before disaster struck. Breathless and soaked, she tended to Shadow, applying pressure to his bleeding leg. Adrian had arrived shortly after, his gratitude and disbelief mingling as he watched this stranger save the life of his most treasured companion. That moment had etched Catherine's face and spirit into his memory forever. Back to the present, as the car sped toward the city, the silence between Adrian and Catherine spoke volumes. He studied her quietly, the dust on her worn shoes, the faint scars on her hands, each detail a testament to the battles she fought daily. "Catherine, I want to help you," he finally said, voice steady but sincere. "Not because of what you did for Shadow, but because I see strength in you, strength the world has overlooked." Her eyes glistened with tears she fought to hold back. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "This is just the beginning," Adrian replied. The car pulled up outside a bustling city mall, a place Catherine had only ever glimpsed from afar. As they entered, the gleaming floors and vibrant displays dazzled her senses. For the first time, she walked freely through a world that had seemed so out of reach. Yet whispers followed them, stifled laughs from strangers who couldn't comprehend why a billionaire would be seen with a beggar girl. But Catherine walked tall, her resolve unshaken. Adrian watched her closely, admiring the resilience etched into every step. "Today," he said, "you shop for yourself. No limits." And so, amidst the luxury and the judgment, Catherine began to discover a new world. But beneath the surface, darker challenges waited. Challenges that would test not just her courage, but the very heart of the man who had reached out to her. The city lights flickered as Adrian's sleek, black car glided through the bustling streets, heading away from the toll plaza and toward a world Catherine had never dared to imagine. The smell of freshly brewed coffee, the hum of conversations in high-end boutiques, the polished glass walls reflecting sparkling chandeliers, all of it was a universe apart from the dusty roadside where Catherine had spent much of her young life. She sat quietly beside Adrian, the seatbelt unfamiliar and strange against her worn jacket. her hands rough and calloused from years of hardship, rested nervously in her lap. Her eyes darted around the interior of the car, marveling at its immaculate cleanliness and the soft hum of the engine. For a moment, the weight of everything she had endured, the cold nights, the hungry days, the harsh glances from strangers seemed to lift. Adrian glanced at her through the rearview mirror, catching the flicker of wonder in her eyes. He wanted to say something, but the silence between them felt comfortable, a fragile thread connecting two worlds. As they walked through the mall, whispers followed them. Groups of white shoppers exchanged glances and smirks, their voices low but filled with amusement. "Look at him," one woman whispered. "A billionaire playing charity with a street kid." Another man chuckled. "What's the point? She'll never fit in." Catherine felt the sting of their judgment, but she refused to let it break her spirit. She held her head high, drawing strength from Adrian's unwavering presence beside her. They stopped in front of a boutique filled with elegant dresses, shoes and accessories that shimmered under the soft lights. Adrian watched as Catherine's eyes scanned the racks, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the fine fabrics. "Pick whatever you like," he urged softly. Her smile was hesitant but real. She selected a simple but beautiful dress, one that hugged her frame without being flashy. As she tried it on in the fitting room, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, a young girl transformed, not just by clothes but by hope. After the shopping spree, Adrian took Catherine to a quiet cafe within the mall. They sat in a corner booth, sipping warm drinks as the bustle of the mall continued around them. Adrian noticed, but said nothing. Instead, he took Catherine's hand and led her inside. "This is your home now," he told her. "You're part of this family." She swallowed hard, the weight of their gazes pressing down on her. But she reminded herself of the promise Adrian had made. She belonged here. She would fight to prove it. Days turned into weeks. Catherine began to learn the rhythms of this new life, the etiquette, the expectations, the subtle codes she'd never encountered before. Adrian took a personal interest in her progress, introducing her to business associates and teaching her the nuances of corporate life. She studied late into the night, absorbing everything like a sponge. The world that had once seemed so far away was now within reach. But the journey was far from easy. Adrian's daughters remained distant, their quiet hostility a constant reminder of the barriers Catherine faced, not just because of where she came from, but because of the color of her skin. Yet Catherine found strength in the small victories. Each smile she earned, each word of encouragement was a step forward. One evening, as she sat alone in the grand living room, Adrian joined her. He handed her a small envelope. "This is a letter," he said. "I wrote it a long time ago, just in case." "I've been watching you, Catherine," Adrian began, his voice low and serious, not just that day with Shadow. "I know it hasn't been easy for you." She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "No one really sees me," she admitted. "They see the color of my skin, or where I come from, but they don't see me." Adrian nodded, understanding deeper than words. "That's why I want to help. You deserve more than just surviving. You deserve to thrive." Catherine met his gaze, the raw honesty in his eyes giving her a flicker of something she'd almost forgotten, trust. "But why me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because," Adrian said, "you showed me something important that courage, compassion, things money can't buy." As the evening shadows lengthened, Adrian drove Catherine to a beautiful house on the outskirts of the city. It was a modern, spacious home with large windows that caught the fading light. 2 young white women were there, his daughters, who greeted them with polite but distant smiles. Catherine felt their eyes on her, cold and judgmental. The air was thick with unspoken questions and silent comparisons. Catherine opened it carefully. The words inside spoke of trust, responsibility, and belief in her potential to one day take over his business empire. Her breath caught. The weight of his faith in her was overwhelming. But just as hope began to blossom, shadows crept in. On a routine trip to a billionaire summit, Adrian was ambushed by a gang of ruthless criminals. Catherine, who accompanied him as his personal secretary, was left behind, confused and terrified. The gang took Adrian hostage, vanishing into the city's dark underbelly. Catherine's heart pounded as she made a desperate call to the police. her voice trembling as she relayed everything she knew. The police launched an intense investigation. Days stretched into agonizing nights as Catherine worked with the detectives, providing every detail she could remember. Her world had shifted again, but this time she refused to break. Finally, after relentless efforts, the police rescued Adrian. He returned home battered but alive, and overwhelmed with gratitude for Catherine's courage and quick thinking. He rewarded her generously, but more importantly, he showed her a kindness that went beyond money, a bond forged through trials and trust. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxurious mansion, casting long golden beams across the polished hardwood floors. Catherine stood silently by the window, the envelope Adrian had given her resting on the marble countertop nearby. The letter was more than just words. It was a testament, a symbol of faith and responsibility, a key to a world she had never dared to dream about before. Yet as the warm light embraced the room, Catherine's heart was heavy. The events of the past few days haunted her mind. The kidnapping, the desperate police investigation, the fear that had gripped her like a vice. The city that had once seemed so full of promise now revealed its darker, more dangerous face. Her phone buzzed softly on the table. It was a message from Adrian. "Thank you for everything. You were my strength when I was weak. Rest today. Tomorrow we plan our next step." Catherine smiled faintly. Despite everything, Adrian's trust gave her courage. But deep down she knew the fight was far from over. Later that afternoon, Adrian called a family meeting in the grand living room. His two daughters sat stiffly on the leather sofa, eyes cold and distant as they exchanged thinly veiled glances toward Catherine, who stood quietly beside Adrian. "Family isn't just about blood," Adrian began, his voice steady and authoritative. "It's about trust, loyalty, and standing together. Catherine has proven her strength and character in ways you can't even imagine." The room fell silent. His daughters' expressions hardened. One of them, Emily, finally spoke up, her voice sharp. "Dad, with all due respect, Catherine is not from our world. This is business and family. We have standards to uphold." Catherine's throat tightened, but she held her ground. "I may not come from your world," she said softly, "but I am willing to learn, to work, and to be part of something bigger than myself." Adrian's eyes softened. "That's why she's here, to learn, to grow, and to lead one day." Emily scoffed but said no more. The tension hung thick in the air, but Adrian refused to let it break the fragile peace. That evening, Catherine retreated to the small, rented apartment Adrian had arranged for her on the other side of town. It was a modest place compared to the mansion, but it was hers. A sanctuary where she could think, reflect, and prepare for the battles ahead. She pulled out the letter again. "When I'm gone, you will take the reins of my empire," it said. Could she really live up to such expectations? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. Catherine opened it cautiously to find Marcus. The weight of that responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. One of Adrian's trusted security guards standing outside. "Adrian wanted me to check on you," Marcus said, his voice low and respectful. "He knows this isn't easy for you." Catherine smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Marcus. It means a lot." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Catherine was immersed in business lessons, corporate meetings and etiquette training. She studied contracts and financial reports, learned to navigate boardroom politics, and absorbed the delicate art of negotiation. Adrian was a patient teacher but demanding. He pushed her to be better, to rise above her fears and doubts. At the same time, Catherine faced constant reminders of her outsider status. Emily and her sister avoided her, their polite facades cracking into subtle insults and dismissive remarks. One afternoon, during a high-profile charity gala, Catherine found herself isolated in a sea of expensive gowns and whispered judgments. A group of women exchanged knowing glances and made faint, snide comments about the Billionaire's latest charity project. Catherine's hands trembled slightly, but she remembered Adrian's advice. "Hold your head high. Your strength is in your dignity." She smiled politely and walked away, determination burning quietly within her. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the kidnapping case was far from closed. The police investigation uncovered troubling clues, a network of criminals with ties to organized crime and corrupt officials. Adrian's enemies were watching, waiting for a chance to strike again. One evening, Catherine received an anonymous message on her phone. "Stay away from the billionaire's business, or you'll be next." Her heart pounded. Fear and anger warred inside her, but she refused to be intimidated. She showed the message to Adrian, who frowned deeply. "They want to break us, Catherine, but we won't let them." Together, they ramped up security and prepared for the inevitable storm. In the quiet moments between meetings and threats, Catherine found solace in unexpected friendships. Marcus became a steady presence, offering guidance and support without judgment. Adrian's assistant, a sharp and kind woman named Linda, taught her the nuances of office politics and helped her build confidence. Slowly, Catherine began to feel she belonged, not just as a secretary or charity case, but as a valued member of Adrian's world. One rainy evening, as the city lights blurred through the windows of the office, Adrian pulled Catherine aside. "You've come a long way," he said quietly. "But this is just the beginning. The real challenge lies ahead." Catherine met his gaze, her own eyes shining with resolve. "I'm ready." As night deepened, a storm brewed, not just outside, but within the walls of power and privilege. The struggle for acceptance, the fight against unseen enemies, and the battle to claim her rightful place were just unfolding. Catherine's journey had transformed, from a chance encounter on a roadside to a fight for survival and legacy. And through it all, one truth remained clear. Kindness and courage could change even the darkest of destinies. A kindness that went beyond money, a bond forged through trials and trust. As the sun set over the city, Catherine stood at the window of her new home, the letter from Adrian still clutched in her hand. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges she had never imagined. But she no longer walked it alone. Her journey was only just beginning. The morning. Air was thick with tension as Catherine entered the sleek glass doors of Adrian's corporate headquarters. The hum of the city was distant, muffled by the towering skyscrapers that housed the world's elite. Yet inside, the battles were just beginning. Catherine's footsteps echoed softly in the polished marble lobby. Today was not just another day at work. It was the day she would step fully into the eye of the storm. Adrian had arranged for her to attend a critical board meeting, one where the future of the company would be decided. She adjusted the tailored blazer Adrian had given her, a symbol of her new role and responsibility, and took a deep breath. The weight of expectation was suffocating, but she reminded herself of the journey that had brought her here. From the streets where she once begged for spare change, to the moment she saved a billionaire's dog, and now to the heart of power itself. The boardroom was imposing, with a long mahogany table and high-backed leather chairs. Around it sat the company's most powerful figures, mostly white men in crisp suits, their eyes sharp and skeptical as Catherine entered. She felt the weight of their gazes, some curious, others dismissive. Emily and her sister sat near the head of the table, their expressions unreadable but clearly guarded. Adrian took his place at the front, his presence commanding respect. "Today we discuss a new direction," he began, "and Catherine will present her proposal." Whispers rippled through the room. Catherine's heart pounded, but she focused on the documents in front of her. Her proposal was bold and made an innovative plan to expand the company's reach into underserved communities, a strategy combining technology and social responsibility. It was more than just business. It was a vision for change. As she spoke, her voice steady but passionate, she saw some faces soften, others harden. When she finished, silence hung for a moment before questions erupted. One board member challenged her sharply. "This is risky and your experience is limited." Catherine met his gaze calmly. "Innovation requires risk, and experience is gained by taking the first step." "I am ready to lead." They sat together for a while, sharing stories and laughter, a brief respite from the chaos. Days turned into weeks. Catherine's role grew, her influence spreading beyond the boardroom. She became a beacon for employees, from all walks of life, proof that talent and determination could break barriers. But the threats persisted. One night, as she left the office, a shadowy figure followed her. Heart racing, she quickened her pace, clutching her keys like a weapon. Suddenly, a firm hand grasped her shoulder. She whirled around to see Marcus, eyes sharp and protective. "You're not alone." Relief washed over her, but fear lingered. Then came the news. Adrian was summoned to an emergency meeting with other billionaires, leaders who saw Catherine's rise as a threat to their old power structures. Catherine knew this was a turning point. The stakes were higher than ever. In the days that followed, she dived deeper into the company's inner workings, uncovering signs of sabotage and betrayal. Whispers of conspiracy echoed through the halls. Her determination hardened. This was no longer just about survival. It was about justice. Adrian's approving nod bolstered her confidence. The meeting ended with a narrow approval of her plan, but it was a victory nonetheless. Catherine knew the road ahead would be filled with obstacles, but this was her first real step. Back in her office, she allowed herself a rare smile. Marcus stopped by with a reassuring nod. "You handled yourself well today." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was another anonymous message. "Watch your back." A chill ran down her spine. The danger was closer than ever. Meanwhile, Emily and her sister conspired behind closed doors. "We can't let her ruin everything," Emily hissed. "She's an outsider, and this company isn't hers to lead." Their cold rivalry simmered, threatening to boil over. That evening, Catherine returned to her apartment, exhaustion tugging at her every muscle. The city outside was alive with lights and sirens, but inside she craved silence. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. She opened the door to find Linda, Adrian's assistant, holding a small package. "I thought you might need a little pick-me-up," Linda said with a gentle smile. Inside the package was a book on leadership, resilience, and courage. Catherine's eyes welled with tears. "Thank you." One evening in the quiet of her apartment, Catherine stared out at the city skyline. The lights glittered like stars, each one a story, a struggle, a hope. She whispered to herself, "I will not back down. I will fight for Adrian, for myself, and for everyone who believes in a better future." As the night deepened, so did her resolve. The morning sun filtered through the towering glass windows of Adrian's office, casting long shadows over the sleek mahogany desk where Catherine sat, reviewing the latest company reports. Every line told a story, not just of profits and losses, but of the lives affected by the decisions made within these walls. Despite the early hour, Catherine's mind was racing. The past weeks had been a whirlwind, a dizzying mix of triumphs and threats, breakthroughs and betrayals, yet she refused to be broken. Her phone buzzed, Adrian's name flashing on the screen. She answered quickly. "Catherine, I need you in the conference room." Now, his voice was steady but urgent. She rose, smoothing her blazer, and walked briskly down the hall. The conference room was filled with faces both familiar and hostile. Emily sat with her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tensions. Adrian stood at the head of the table, his usual calm replaced by a hint of frustration. "We have a crisis," he began. "Our biggest investor has threatened to pull funding unless we reconsider Catherine's expansion plan." Murmurs filled the room. Catherine held her ground. "Why, because of me?" she asked, voice steady but tinged with hurt. One of the older board members, a man named Collins, spoke up. "It's not personal, Catherine. It's business. This plan is too risky for our shareholders." Adrian's eyes met Catherine's. "But it's the right move for the company and for the communities we serve." The meeting ended with no resolution, but Catherine left feeling the walls closing in. The resistance was stronger than ever, and the stakes were escalating. Outside, Catherine met Marcus. His presence was a balm to her stormy thoughts. "We'll get through this," he said firmly. "You're not alone." They walked through the city streets, the hustle of daily life continuing around them, a stark contrast to the battles. Catherine faced within glass towers. That evening, Catherine returned to her rented apartment. The small space was a far cry from the luxury she'd been exposed to at Adrian's side, but it was hers, an anchor in the chaos. She sank into the worn armchair, exhaustion pressing down. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from an unknown number. "Stop pushing, or things get worse." Fear prickled at her skin, But determination burned brighter. She grabbed the book Linda had given her, flipping to a passage about resilience in the face of adversity. Her fingers trembled slightly. "I will not back down," she whispered. The next day at the office brought a surprise. Adrian summoned Catherine to a private meeting. "We have an opportunity," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "A chance to present our plan at the Global Business Summit next month." Catherine's heart leapt. This was her chance to prove the value of her vision on the world stage. But Adrian continued, "There will be opposition. Powerful people who don't want this change." Catherine nodded, steeling herself. "I'm ready." Over the following weeks, Catherine threw herself into preparation. She pored over data, crafted speeches, and rehearsed answers to every possible question. Her nights were long, filled with late calls to experts and allies. Marcus became her sounding board, offering insights and encouragement. At times, the pressure felt unbearable. Emily's barbs and the board's cold stares haunted her. Yet every setback fueled her resolve. One evening, as Catherine left the office, she found herself face to face with a man she didn't recognize. His eyes were dark and cold. "You should be careful who you trust," he warned before disappearing into the shadows. The warning sent a chill down her spine. The day of the summit arrived. The grand auditorium was packed with influential leaders from across the globe. Catherine's palms were sweaty as she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinding. She began her presentation, voice steady and passionate. She spoke not just about profits, but about purpose, how business could be a force for good, lifting communities and bridging divides. As she spoke, she saw faces soften, nodding in agreement. But then came the questions, sharp, challenging, some outright hostile. Yet Catherine held firm, answering with intelligence and grace. Backstage, Adrian approached her. "You did well. You made them listen." Relief and pride surged through her. But as the applause faded, so did her sense of security. The fight was far from over. That night, Catherine received another threatening message. This time it was a photo, her apartment building circled in red. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. The battle for her future had become personal. Determined not to be cowed, Catherine reached out to her community. She organized a gathering, inviting local leaders, activists, and everyday people. The turnout was overwhelming, a diverse crowd united by hope and determination. Catherine spoke from the heart, sharing her story and vision. "We can change the narrative," she said. "Together, we are stronger than fear and prejudice." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices echoing through the night. But behind the scenes, Emily and her allies plotted their next move. They would not relinquish power without a fight. The tension escalated, the stakes higher than ever. As Catherine prepared for what lay ahead, she found strength in unexpected places, friendship, love, and an unshakable belief in justice. Her journey was far from over, but the path was becoming clear. The city buzzed with an uneasy energy, as if it sensed the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Catherine's phone continued to buzz late into the night, calls from supporters, friends, even strangers who believed in her vision. Yet beneath the rising tide of hope lurked shadows of doubt and danger. The day after the rally, Catherine woke before dawn. Her mind raced, but she forced herself to breathe deeply. She had a mission and the world was watching. At the office, Adrian awaited her arrival. His usually stoic expression showed a flicker of concern. "We've received new threats," he said quietly, handing over an envelope. Anonymous but serious. Catherine opened it slowly. Inside were photos, not just of her apartment, but of Marcus, her closest ally. Her chest tightened. "They're trying to scare us," Adrian said firmly. "But we can't let them win." She nodded, steeling herself. Later that day, Catherine met with her legal team to discuss the possibility of protective measures. The stakes had escalated beyond corporate politics. This was now a battle for safety and survival. Her lawyer, a sharp-minded woman named Evelyn, outlined options, restraining orders, security details, even relocation if necessary. Catherine felt a pang of frustration. "I didn't sign up for this," she admitted. "I wanted to change the world, not live in fear." Evelyn's eyes softened. Change often comes with sacrifice. Determined to push forward, Catherine threw herself into the upcoming city council elections. Her campaign was built on a promise of unity and justice, a vision of a city where everyone, regardless of background, could thrive. She worked tirelessly, meeting with community groups, attending forums, and answering questions with honesty and passion. Her message resonated, especially among those who had long felt ignored. One evening, as Catherine prepared for a televised debate, Marcus pulled her aside. "There's something you need to know," he said gravely. "Emily's group is planning to sabotage the debate." Catherine's heart pounded. "How?" "We're not sure, but you need to be ready." The debate night arrived, tension thick in the air. The auditorium was packed, cameras flashing, viewers across the city watching. Catherine stepped onto the stage, her voice steady despite the storm within. Emily, seated across from her, wore a smug smile. The moderator posed questions, some fair, others clearly designed to unsettle Catherine. Halfway through, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. A gasp rippled through the crowd. In the chaos, Catherine remained calm. Using the emergency lighting and her phone's flashlight, she continued to speak, her voice strong, unwavering. "Darkness cannot silence the light of truth," she said. "No matter the obstacles, our vision remains clear." The power returned moments later, and applause erupted. Catherine's resilience won the night. But as she left the stage, a figure blocked her path, one of Emily's associates. One of Emily's associates. "Not so fast," he sneered, shoving her roughly. Marcus intervened quickly, pulling Catherine away. The incident was reported, making headlines citywide. Public sympathy surged toward Catherine. Days later, Catherine visited her old neighborhood, seeking strength from the roots of her journey. Walking through familiar streets, she felt the weight of her past and the hope of the future. Children played in the park, where she once dreamed of a better life. Mothers greeted her with smiles, their eyes reflecting pride and encouragement. One woman, Mrs. Jenkins, approached. Catherine's grip tightened. No, it only begins. The final days before the election were a whirlwind of activity. Catherine's speeches, interviews, and rallies drew larger crowds than ever. She embodied hope, a beacon in a city hungry for change. On election night, as results trickled in, Catherine and her team gathered in nervous anticipation. The numbers showed a clear victory. Tears of relief and joy flowed freely. Standing before her supporters, Catherine raised her voice. "This win belongs to all of us," she said. "Together, we will build a city where no one is judged by their skin, but by their heart and deeds." The crowd roared in agreement. But as the celebrations continued, Catherine knew this was just the beginning. The battles for justice, equality, and unity would continue. But now, she had the platform, the power, and the people to fight.